So, hello everyone and welcome to the next edition in the WinMagic Speed webinar series, Secure Windows and Linux in Pharma and Healthcare. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend today's presentation. I would especially like to thank those of you attending from outside of North America for taking the time out of your evenings to join us today. As always, before we begin, I have a few logistics to get through. First up, today's webinar, as always, will be recorded and a link will be delivered to your inbox via our follow-up thank you emails about 24 hours after today's presentation. Next, I would like to encourage you guys to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. That way we can use your feedback to keep delivering high quality content. Finally, feel free to drop a few questions in the Q&A box below as we go through the demonstration today. We will do our best to get to them at the end of today's presentation. However, we will do our best to get to any questions that don't get covered in today's presentation individually via email after today's demonstration. With that, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce you to today's speakers, Gary McCracken, our CISSP and CISO and VP of Technologies at WinMagic. I would also like to introduce you to Raimundo Garcia, a member of our pre-sales team who will be leading today's demonstration. With that, I'll turn it over to Gary.
Thank you, Graham, and hello, everyone. So this is a demo webinar. It's a follow-up to our April 27th webinar on successfully securing data in pharma that would feature the Endo Pharmaceuticals. In that webinar, Endo Pharmaceuticals described how they found SecureDoc's preboot networking authentication technology, we call it PBConnects, secure and easy to manage. So today, Raimundo will be demonstrating PBConnects with integration to Active Directory, so you can see for yourself how easy it is to manage and to use. We also touched upon HIPAA, NIST, and GDPR about being some of the driving regulations that need to be taken into consideration by global security teams. But security threats themselves are often drive the state in the stance on security. So Raimundo will also be demonstrating some other capabilities our customers have found to be extremely valuable in the field to achieve both security and compliance. These include enterprise-grade encryption for Linux endpoints and file-level encryption for separation of duties for confidentiality, even from administrators. Without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Raimundo.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, everyone. For this quick demo, I'm going to play the role of a domain administrator. Let me share my screen. I have been just notified that 2 new users, Susan and Mike, have joined the company and they need access to encrypted endpoints. So normally, I will just go to Active Directory and create my users. Let's create Susan. And let's create Mike. I'm going to also create a group for these 2 users. Let's call it PHI group. Okay. So the things, Susan, go to her device, or maybe this is a shared device and she needs to log into the preboot. So how do we give her access to this device? Well, there are several things that we can do. We could send a request for the full disk encryption admin to cache Susan credentials into all the devices she needs access to. This will require that all the devices be turned on and the OS loaded so they can get the keys from the server. It also requires time, and time is money, because while the approvals go on, Susan and Mike might be sitting there waiting, doing nothing. The second option is maybe have just a sole credential cached in this device that anyone could use to unlock the preboot. But this is probably not that safe. Or maybe we just can send a key to the device, which will always unlock the device on behalf of the user without prompting for credentials. I see this often on shared device. We call it permanent Autoboot. It might make things easier, but bypassing the preboot and protecting the encrypted drive with only the OS credentials doesn't really follow the spirit of HIPAA. And let me quote this from this guide to storage encryption technologies, where it says the requirement for preboot authentication means the users have to be able to authenticate using the most fundamental components of a device, such as a standard keyboard, because the OS is not loaded, OS level drivers are unavailable. So how do you simplify users' access to an encrypted endpoint, while at the same time keeping it safe? How do we do it at WinMagic? Simply, Susan and Mike will just go to the device and enter their AD credentials we just created. Okay, let's do that again for Mike. You see this icon in the lower right? It means that our preboot has a full network stack. It is connected to the internal network, and it is ready to authenticate your users directly against Active Directory. It also means that if Susan forgets his password, the help desk just needs to change it in Active Directory, and she can use the new password right away. So let's log in Mike. As you can see, Susan and Mike don't have to enter the credential twice because they are passed to Windows. By the way, the WinMagic client has also cached Susan and Mike's credentials in the device. So in the future, they can unlock the preboot even if the device is off the network. So what about if this is still too much work? Maybe your devices, you have devices that really need to Autoboot without asking for credentials. Or maybe you need to deploy Windows updates and you don't want the device to be stuck at the preboot. Well, will I get in trouble, you know, if I have a permanent Autoboot and if one of those devices just walk out of the door? Our solution is to allow a device to Autoboot only when it is connected to the internal network. Going to go, let me show you how easy this is to implement. I'm just going to go and enable on this built-in all device group. It can also be enabled in just a group of devices. Make a check mark. Let's turn on Susan device again. So this countdown is given to give Susan a chance to enter her credentials, but if she doesn't enter the credentials, the device is going to request an Autoboot key over the network, and the machine is going to Autoboot. If these machines were to walk out of the door, then because it cannot get the Autoboot key, it will be asking for the credentials, and that way you are meeting HIPAA. So let me disable this. Let me start this device one more time. So, and this is how we do secure Autoboot over the network.
Thanks you, Raimundo. Can you give us an example of how this network-based authentication could benefit a large organization such as a hospital?
Well, Gary, this ability to provide multiple user login functionality at preboot is a critical component for large organizations with a large numbers of users and shared workstations. Personally, I have seen that many customers in the healthcare industry find this useful. To give you an example, for a hospital, they employ medical cards with PHI data used by many different nurses. PB Connects allows a nurse to automatically log into that medical card and access that info so that it can be shared securely with only the right nurses. And not only we do this for Windows, we can also do it for Linux as well.
Thanks.
So let me show you how we do this in an Ubuntu endpoint. So as you can see, this is the same, well, similar preboot environment screen as we have in Windows. And Susan needs to log in onto this Linux endpoint. Well, it's all the same. Susan just enter their credentials and it's connected to the network. And this is going to take the Susan against Active Directory. The reason I bring Linux into this conversation is because it is getting harder and harder to ignore Linux endpoints. I mean, they are everywhere and HIPAA doesn't discriminate. In fact, over the last few months, I'm being requested by almost every potential customer that I include Linux in my demos, because many providers are adding it to their environment, and it is critical that they provide the same security and user experience as in Windows.
So Armando, are Windows and Linux the only operating systems that SecureDoc can protect, or are there others?
Thanks for the question, Gary. No, it is a single pane of glass all the way. We manage the encryption for Windows, Macs, Linux, VDIs, local endpoints, cloud endpoints, AWS, Azure, VMware, Nutanix, and others, you name it. We also do passwordless authentication and file and folder encryption. In fact, let me show you how we can also protect PHI data using our file encryption solution. In my experience, the capability to encrypt sensitive information at the file and folder level can allow medical professionals in a large organization to easily share this info without the danger of unauthorized access or exposure to that data. In a healthcare setting, whether it be patients themselves, their doctors, or others, only the right individuals should have access to the secure data. For this part of the demo, let me log in Susan back into the OS, into the preboot. Okay, I'm going to play the role of a not so good administrator, maybe I'm a rogue administrator, and I need to give Susan and Mike a way to share their data. So this is a shared drive. I'm going to create a folder. The way I have it configured, every user in this Active Directory have access to these folders. I mean, pretty much these folders, I have given the built-in group, everyone access to this folder. So normally, Susan wants to share protected information with Mike, and then we go to the folder. and they will take. They will put. Let me put in here some file. So put some personal info. I'm going to. We have there some names, birthdays, social securities, and well, Mike wants to read that data, and he normally will just go to the share folder, open that file, and be good. But the problem is that this is the domain server, and this is the domain administrator, and I can also open that file and look at the information that I'm approved to look at. So how do we take care of this? How do we help with this? I'm going to go to my console and going to go to my keys, and I'm going to create a new key. Let's call it PHI data. I'm going to create it. And now I'm going to go to the groups. I remember the group that we created in the beginning, PHI group. And let me see, I don't see my users here. Did I audit this here really quick? Okay. Just allow me 1 second to import these users. Okay, and they're here. So I'm going to add the key that we just created to this group. Now, when I add a key to the group, it pretty much our console, our database will assign that key to every user that is under that group, and this is totally dynamic. If you remove a user from the group in Active Directory, then that key will be taken away. So I'm also going to go to the folder encryption policy, and I'm going to create a new policy. You can see that we can create network shares policies, or we can create local policies. I'm going to create this policy. So this share folder is created with this key. The thing I'm going to do is assign that folder, that encryption policy, to the devices that the users are going to be logging at. I'm going to log out from this machine, so it takes the policy and the user receives the key. This is only has to be done once. Wait for the to open. Let me communicate with the server. By default, it communicates every hour. I have it communicates every minute, but for this demo. Okay, so let's try that again. Let's go to the share drive. Let's go to the PHI data, and let's open this folder. And you see, Susan can see this the data in this file. She doesn't have to do anything special. She can edit this file. No, and you see, this logs means that it is encrypted and is using the PHI data key that we created. So Mike can also go to that folder. Come here and do the same. They have access to everything. And what about the domain administrator? Well, he still have access to that folder. I mean, everyone still have access to that folder. I can open it, but this is what I see. So that file stays encrypted. If I take this file and move it to the desktop, it's encrypted. If I send it to the recycle bin, it's still encrypted. If I send it to removable media, it is still encrypted and it's safe. And this is how we protect the PHI data using our file encryption solution. Back to you, Gary.
Thanks, Armando, for the demo and lightning demo. And we have had some questions that came in the Q&A. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening to the demo, but let's try to get to many of those questions as we can in the next 8 minutes. Now, there's this question, and it came in at the time you were talking about a PB Connect's Autoboot, and the question is, will the machine need to be on the same network as the server in order for it to go through the Autoboot?
No. Pretty much is when you do the PB Connect's Autoboot, it's going to our communication servers, and you have an option when configuring the servers whether they are going to pass the command to our database or not. So you can have 10 different offices, and they can be doing in different networks, and they can be doing the PB Connect's Autoboot if you decide to configure it that way. I mean, you can do, if you wish to, that this is not secure at all, but you can do a PB Connect's Autoboot over the internet if you decide to. So you can configure from what networks, from what environments the PB Connect's Autoboot is going to work or not.
Thank you. So here's another one for you. I work at a smaller healthcare organization that still uses a variety of legacy devices that require the use of removable media, mainly USB. As a result, we have a lot of removable disks, I guess the USB. Can SecureDoc protect my USB devices? USB drives, it says.
Absolutely. Yes, we can secure USB devices and even go as far as to enforce that encryption. We can even decide if a USB or other form of removable media is secure with a user or a group key or even with an enterprise-wide key. So those drives can be shared with other users in the company. And there are some cases where this removable media has to be shared with third parties that don't have WinMagic or they are not totally authorized with the keys. And we can protect those USB drive with password as well. In short, yes, we can protect USB devices.
Good. Okay, here's one. My companies have problems in the past with devices that have gone missing from some of our medical offices. How can SecureDoc help us prove that the devices were encrypted?
Well, Mike, we have a full reporting capability for encryption status of all devices via our centralized management console. You go in there and you see all kinds of devices, Linux, we manage BitLocker, if we manage Opal Drive, if this is Ubuntu or any kind of device that we are protecting. And we can leverage our reporting to prove encryption status of any device that is lost or stolen. We keep a log of everything that happens to a device during the life cycle since the encryption happened, when it was encrypted, what users are attached to a device, and we provide the reports that can help you prove so.
Good. Okay. Is there any form of endpoint wipe capability? That's probably a crypto race question.
Yes, we have that. In fact, we are a little more secure than our competition. I mean, normally the competition will just send cryptographic commands or wipe commands, and the machine has to boot up, get to the OS, connect, and then it will receive the command. But we're more secure because we can send a cryptographic command that can be received not only when the OS has loaded, but also the preboot. So if you have a machine that left the company and someone's turned on the device and is connected to a network, as soon as it gets to the preboot, it will get that command, and it is going to wipe the secure space, wipe all the keys, wipe the preboot, and it's going to leave the machine encrypted. Later, if you recover that device and you want to do some forensics, we provide also ways that you can read that encrypted data in a way that doesn't affect the forensics. Or if it's some machine that you just need to restore to a working condition, we back up all that information so you can restore that device and get it working again.
Good. Thank you. I have another one here. I've seen WinMagic discuss passwordless authentication before in previous webinars. How does this fit in with today's demo? Well, let me take that one, Armando, because you're not demoing it today, but maybe you will in the future. That's an excellent question. It makes sense to use the same endpoint security solution for both encryption for data at rest on the device as you've seen here today, and authentication to servers and web servers such as SaaS. That's because they got a bunch of things in common. They both require strong presence on the device, on the endpoint. When done right, they both require strong foundation cryptography. They both need to be as transparent as possible, and they need to provide a consistent user experience. So when there makes sense to manage them both by the same enterprise for one console, because it decreases costs, IT costs, and improves security. It decreases attack surface and things like that. So we're going to have demonstrate that in the future. That's a one console managing both the authentication and the encryption in a future webinar in this series. So stay tuned. And with that, we're pretty well out of time. I'll turn it over to Graham. If there's anything to wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the questions today. If we haven't had a chance to answer your question directly, by all means, we will reach out to you individually via email to make sure your question does in fact get answered. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next edition of the Speed webinar series, where we will be discussing the danger posed to the modern enterprise by phishing and related attack vectors. Awesome. Thanks guys for joining us, and enjoy your days or evenings, depending on which time zone you're in.
Thanks. Bye.